My name is Jeanne.
Okay. Jeanne, do you want to tell me a little bit about growing up in Buffalo, where you grew up?
I was one of 10 children, 5 girls and 5 boys. I grew up on the east side of Buffalo. I went to St. Nicholas School for 12 years. I lived across the street from the church and had to run to get to Mass in time, even though it was a joke with the nuns as I ran into school because everyone else was there. My school years were fun. My family was fun. My dad had a bad time with the Depression. He lost quite large pieces of real estate. He lost his home, brand new Buick, just about left him penniless. All he really had left was his trade, which was a master plumber. But he said, "Mother, we just rebuild again," and he did with his big Irish smile and was such a loving man. School years were very normal until my birthday, the 6th of December, 1941, and it was a Saturday night. I was with my girlfriends, complaining nothing ever happened in our lives. And on Sunday, early Sunday afternoon, we found out Pearl Harbor had been attacked, and which turned our lives into upside down. I never want another birthday like that again. Our high school, during our high school years, my brother and every other fellow in the parish were
Were they drafted?
conscripted.
Oh,
And my dad was head of the draft board. And if every once in a while someone appeared back on the scene at home, we would always say, how did he get out, Dad?" And he'd say, "Never mind, don't scandalize your neighbors." Our high school years went on, and some of the kids made fun. We were taking German, and kids didn't like the idea we were taking German, and we all someone wrote on the board, "German is verboten." And did we get a lecture on life? Everybody wasn't a Nazi. There were good German people who were just victims, and the war went on, and two girls, two of them that sat behind me in school, one of their brothers were killed on the way back to camp after furlough, and another one was killed in action. And my brother Fran, who was 2 years older than I, he was killed in a Jeep accident while going to help at an accident in Marseille, France. He was buried in Marseille, and in the meantime, I met my husband, Jerry, who had just returned from service, and in a year and a half we were married, and by this time they were going to, my mother and dad had a letter from the government that they were going to dismantle the cemetery in Marseille, and they had an opportunity to bring Fran's body home. So they were, they thought as long as they were going to move him, they would have him come here. So that year, that was 1948, I think. They brought his body back, and he was buried in the family plot at Mount Olivet.
How was your life affected by the war, your day-to-day life, rationing and no gasoline and...
Well, one good thing during this time, my sister was married in 1943. I was a beautician and wore a white uniform and white shoes. We got two coupons a year for new shoes. And I hated to buy, I knew I would need shoes for work, so we bought bedroom slippers to match our dresses. So that's how we got around that. And when we graduated, I know we always used to carry bouquets of roses, but that year we decided to have masses for the boys that still weren't home. And we had scrap drives, metal drives. We recycled the cans, and we used to take the covering off the tin cans and wash them out, and we'd step on them, and which I do to this day.
Do you remember Spam?
Oh, my husband hates Spam. The worst thing in the world, he hates Spam. And it was tough when the kids came home. You know, I would find myself seeing the back of a soldier, you know, and say, jeepers, that could be Fran, you know. And that was hard. But life went on, and we had our children, and it was eventful.
How old were you when you got married?
21.
Were you young?
I was 21 and when we were married in October, and I would have been 22 in December, so it's closer to 22. And we had our children.
Where did you live first?
We had the family home. My brother-in-law had been with the Army of Occupation, and my father made a duplex out of the house, and my sister had one side, and we had the other, until Pat was born in that house in 47, and 49 he was born, not 47. And I think it was 51 or 52. We bought our first 51. It was. We bought our first house, and we had our second child, Gerard. And we lived there. I think until Pat was around 6. We moved out here to Edgardsville.
Was it country out here then?
Well, in some places,
Mhm.
many St. Benedict's Church. Just before we were married, they built the church there. So every day when I came out, I worked in Snyder, and when I first went to work there, I thought I was going to the ends of the earth, and coming home, the girl I worked for, they would pick me up, and the first day I came home from work, I spotted a mailman. I said, "Oh, they have the same kind of mailman out here." It was so nice to see a familiar part of my life. And then we had the 3 boys, and we had Mary Kay by the time we moved here. Mary Kay was 2. And then we had Anne after her, and of course Michelle, 18 months after Anne. Pat went, when Michelle was 2, Pat went away to college, and that was the highlight of the week when Pat called. Everybody was waiting to talk to him.
Where did Pat go to school?
He went to he went to a school in Ohio, but then he transferred to Annapolis, to St. John's in Annapolis, Maryland. That's where he graduated from, Annapolis, and then he went to Princeton for his
Master's?
his master's, yeah.
And he was young, you said, when he
Yeah,
started?
but he wasn't that young when he got out of St. John's. By the time we thought he was going to stay there forever. So of course he met Kate, and that put a whole new
Emphasis on learning.
he was in love. That's the only thing I can say. And she was so good for him. And Gerard had been married the November before, and then Louise and Fran were married in June, and then Pat was married in September, and we had love and bloom that summer. The things went on normally, pretty normally, like most families.
You had an active home life, very active home.
Oh, jeepers! You know, I couldn't. You'd have to say that it was active. We were busy. Jerry was busy all the time. He worked long hours, and he worked 7 days a week, and for quite a few years of our marriage. And but I had come through where nobody was working, and this was manna. This was manna from heaven. Never once did I ever have to worry about a paycheck. You know, so I had watched this in the Depression and had gone to school. even though my father was able to make a living, just a living, we never had to go onto welfare or anything. And so that was a big plus. And in the meantime, like he said, things had returned to normal. And do you hear my
Yeah, I hear your clock.
my Christmas clock?
Who was the disciplinarian?
My mother. She always
Oh, yeah?
said that's why her right hand was bigger than her other hand. But she ruled the roost and ruled the rooster. She was strict, but they were fair. You know, I never I always had the feeling I'd never do anything to embarrass them or make them feel badly, and I don't think I ever did. You know, it was just a really terrific relationship, and in fact, one of my daughters asked me one time, "Didn't you rebel?" And I said, that wasn't in the dictionary. When we were growing up, we were expected to, we were expected to be respectful.
Where were you in the 10?
I was fourth from the top and sixth from the fourth from the bottom and sixth from the top.
And how many brothers and sisters?
5 and 5.
Oh.
We were evenly matched. There was we had a set twin boys, and they were. Of course, all these younger ones were. I figured they belonged to me too, and it was interesting. You know, it wasn't perfect. It was. They got after us when we needed it, but I loved them dearly.
What was your growing up, what was your main source of entertainment?
Well, during the war, we saw every movie that there was, because there was nobody around. And in fact, my date for our prom was a fellow that was 10 years older than me, and he lived 2 doors away, and he had been in service, and he came home again. I never found out why. Our school life, and it was just normal, and
There was no television.
Oh, right. There was no television. I helped my mother a lot. My mother was ill. My mother had an enlarged heart and blood pressure that she carried around. How she lived as many years as she did was remarkable. She just, I was her number one. By this time, my sisters had gone to work, and my girlfriends had all gone to work, but I used to come home from school, and I helped her. And when Jerry and I were going together, we used to sit. My dad didn't like to go out even alone in the evening, and he, somebody called and said, I've got $3 to put on your bill. He got showered and dressed, and out he went to get it. And so Jerry and I spent a lot of time with my mother, and of course, you know, my mother told me many things that I used to mention to my older sister, and she looked at me like I was crazy, because it was just a different time in my mother's life, and by this time it was getting toward the end of it, and because because she's just deteriorating. So.
How old was she when she died?
67.
She was young.
Yeah. So she wasn't, but her sister, she had lost one of her sisters at 44, and they did, the two younger ones lived longer, but they didn't live long lives.
What was it like, the difference between raising your children in more in the city and raising the younger ones out here? Was there a big difference?
I don't think so.
No.
Kids are kids.
Okay.
No matter where you are. You know, they're and one of the things that when I think back to is my oldest brother, who was 10 years older than me, had a fatal heart attack at 43, and that was he left 3 small children, and that was a really that was really a shocking experience for all of us. And, he was married to the nicest girl, and we're still real fast friends. She's 86 now, and all those years she raised those did a terrific job with those children, and so that was. Then the rest of the family, my other sisters, one after the other, they died. You know, like in 5 years, I lost 4 sisters. So that, that was harder on this end of my life.
Do you have any siblings left? Any brothers or sisters?
Just one brother. He's 8 years younger than I am. And he keeps reminding me, we're moving up closer and closer in this funeral procession.
Yeah.
So before, when Bill first died, we were way toward the back, and now this is there. This is letting you know that it's coming.
That's right. That's right. So you have many grandchildren?
18 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren.
Wonderful.
1 great-grandson and 2 great-granddaughters. So when we get together, we're a handful. And they go from all ages. Our grandchildren go from 32 to 2. It's spanned of 30 years. And each one has been so precious. If you said which one do you like best, you couldn't pick one. And they're good to us, and especially the son across the street. They come over and they shovel the side of the stairs, make sure so they don't want us to fall off. And during this lifetime that we're talking about, we had some wonderful trips. We went to Puerto Rico. We went to Bermuda. We spent 2 days less than a month in Italy. That we did when we were younger, which was a good thing. And we went on a cruise to Alaska, and we went on a cruise to Caribbean. We both got seasick And that ended the cruising. Never again. And where else did we go? Oh, we went to the British Isles and Ireland. That was our second last big trip. And
Do you still have family in Ireland that you know of?
cousins. My great-grandfather on his land he had 3 sons, and he built homes for them. And those homes are still standing. The home that my dad was born in was still standing, and at the time we were there, it was for sale. And we were there in June, and I forget what is that purple flower?
Lavender? No.
No, rhododendron.
Oh, okay.
Rhododendron grows like weeds do here. It was beautiful, and I don't remember my father that impressing him the beauty. He said it was green, but he never mentioned those flowers. But this was a farm. He was raised on a farm, and I think they were land rich and poor, desperately poor. I mean, that's why they came.
Is that why he immigrated?
They immigrated to and they came and they each helped the next one when they came. And but it was just so lovely. It was breathtakingly lovely, And when I told Jerry I liked that the best of any place I was to, this included the Rome and the Vatican and everything. But this was God-made beauty, and it was just. I just loved it, and Jerry said, "Oh, that's your genes."
What county was it?
He was Skibbereen County, Cork. I think they were 4 miles from the sea.
So, did your father? He came over as a child?
No,
No.
17 he came, and he worked on the. He took I think he was a stevedore on the wharf. And he said, "This back-breaking, this isn't what I'm going to do." So his sister was living here in Buffalo, and he came to Buffalo.
Oh, so he stayed down in New York City?
Yes, he stayed in New York then, and he came to Buffalo. Excuse me. And he was a streetcar. He was a motorman on the streetcar, and he used to drive out to the end of Bailey Avenue then, and he'd get up on he'd have so many minutes before he had to turn around and go back, and he got up on the roof of the streetcar, and he flew the kites for the kids would be waiting for him. And one day there was a spotter on the streetcar. So they fined him 3 days' pay. So he said, there's no future in this, and he went to plumbing school. And I think he was the second highest in his class, and he got a hammer that was his prize for being. So that was his life. He went. I think he went back and before my mother and he were married, and he went back to see his father. And his mother had died when he was 9, and then his father died in 1936. So that he went. Then when he came here to live after my mother died, that same year he went back by ship and visited with all the relatives. And then the second year, he went back, he flew, because he didn't have that, it was too slow for him, you know. And my mother used to tell us, all you Donovans have no rest in your backsides. And that was him. And he was there, I think he was there 3 weeks. And he came back the end of August, and he went in to have, I kept hanging notes all over his apartment because he had an eye exam, and his, his hearing was terrible. And my sisters kept telling me, you better tell him to have his hearing checked. So I hung these notes all over, so he decided he would go get his hearing checked before he had his eyes done. So he went and the doctor found polyps in his ears, and he went into the hospital to have the polyps removed, just a local anesthetic, and the last thing he was telling the doctor about living with these bunch of Italians, and he said, and they feed me worms and horse balls. That's what he called, and then our kids told him who likes ham and garbage? So he after the operation was over, he didn't feel too well, and they called the doctor in, and he said, oh, he probably just took in air with so I stayed with him. He kept trying to chase me home. First and only time Jerry ever took a day off, and just to be here when the kids came home from school, because the girl upstairs Ann was a baby at the time, and she was minding her, and the rest of them were in school. And he kept saying, you go home to your kids. And I said, I'm going. And my sister, who was a nurse, she came with them. And in fact, when we got there, they had closed the door. We were laughing so hard because he was putting his pajamas and robe on, and he was trying to get her coat on for his robe, and we were in hysterics laughing. So I stayed with him, and he kept this up. You go home with your kids. I said, I can't go home. I have to wait for Mary Ellen. So all of a sudden, I was reading something, and De Valera was the president of Ireland. Mm-hmm. He was a friend of my dad's, and I was reading this article in the paper where the State House was robbed while he slept. And I said to my dad, you know, the State House was robbed while your friend slept. Don't they have security there? And he laughed. And my sister had gone out to fix his charge, and all of a sudden he put his head back, and his eyes rolled in his head, and I heard a sound, and I ran down the hall, and I told Mary Ellen, something's wrong with Dad. So she came flying out, and I was looking for her because I didn't want to make a lot of noise, and so she came, and I said to her, do you think we should call a priest, Mary Ellen? And she said, he just went to confession and communion and Saturday and Sunday. And I said, well, shoot, I gotta call Jerry. So I ran downstairs and I ran to go to the elevator, and I pushed the elevator, and the elevator started down, and someone pushed it instead of the elevator going down. I talked to Jerry and I told him what had happened. I went back on the elevator. That's what I did. The elevator started going up, and it went up to the next floor. That's at that time. I'm just trying to think how many years. It was back when the guy got on was on the elevator with the respirator, and he went up all the way up, and then we came down again. And by this time, just as I got off my ears were pounding, and my sister and these other two nurses at that time all clad in white, and my sister looked at me, and this woman that was in the middle, I must have gave some sign that I fainted, and I just remember she took me, and I went up against her, and I came down, and the next thing I come to, and here I'm in bed. I darn near died. So anyway, at the time it was traumatic, but he could have had that happen to him out on the street, and when your brain starts working again, you understand God knows what He's doing.
How did your parents meet? How did your mother and dad meet?
They met at a dance, and my uncle, my great uncle, he was the youngest of my great grandmother's children. So he and my mother were close to the same age, and he was with my dad. And my dad said, "I'll take the tall one, you take the small one." And my mother was only 5'3", so she wasn't really that tall. And that's how they met. It was at one of the Hibernian dances, and they all used to go. My father was a great dancer, and they all used to go dancing. And at that time, he was in plumbing school, and not too long after that, she was on the streetcar. She lived on the west side, and he got on the streetcar, and he was carrying a toilet. And she said she put her head down. She, "Oh God, I hope he doesn't see me." And she said, "Guess what? Here he comes," and he sits next to me. She said, "I was mortified." So he used to pester her, He would come home when our twins were babies. Mary Ellen and I were 18 months apart, and she was 18 months older than them. And he would come in, dirty clothes, everything, and he would grab a baby by each arm, and each one of us would be on his foot. And he'd clump through the house. My mother said, "Put those kids down, you're filthy." And she always said she raised 11 kids, because he was such a, he was full of it,
Where was he living before he married? Was he living?
Pardon?
Where was he living in
He
Buffalo?
lived with his sister.
In what
his
area?
sister and her 7 kids.
And what area? Was it South Buffalo?
No. It was East Side. It was in the East Utica, Jefferson area, where it's on TV every night now. But at the time, it was a mixed German. Most everything at that time. Yeah. It was a mixed racial.
So how did he take to Jerry when you started to date Jerry?
Well, my sister was married to an Italian fellow, and that marriage was rocky, and he didn't want that for me. You know, in fact, she was an inspector, and what was the plane that Bell made? P-40, and she was one of the first inspectors on there. So when I graduated from high school, I wanted to. I said I wanted to go out to Bell because they make good money, and I thought, I said, no, you're not going. He let her go, but he wouldn't let me go. And when he said no, we understood no, you know. And I ended up going to beauty school.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I liked it. While I did it, it was fine. And I worked for a wonderful lady, Mary Fagan. And, but when it was done, it was done. You know, I never, once I had children, I never wanted to go to work. You know, a lot of my friends did, you know, work a couple hours. Their husbands were home by that time. But I saw what they were doing here when I was here. I just never felt comfortable going. When they got a little older, we would leave them and maybe go out for a cup of coffee for an hour. We'd be gone an hour and a half, and we'd lock up the television in our bedroom, and they became experts at getting that television out of that bedroom. Just like we didn't say anything. And when we added to the house, we added the back room, and we added a room downstairs, and Jerry they put a bathroom with a shower in, and he did this for the boys. It went the whole width of the house, and he built shelves, and there was a little delicatessen over here on Long Meadow, and the boys would run like about 10 to 11 and buy something. Then they would run back here, and they didn't think we knew about it. But we knew, but we didn't let them know. And we used to we saw where Gerard had oiled this what do you call them? Spring. There's a big spring on the door, so it would close behind them. And he had oiled it, and there was an oil spot there, and we knew what they were doing, but we just let it go because as long as they ran and they were back in 10 minutes, we didn't want to give them liberty to go for it. So we knew what all their tricks. We just picked our fights.
So you had a very busy time. When the children began to go off to school and you had more time to yourself, you always kept busy, I think.
I know. I still have more time to myself. I still have things going, you know. There's always something going. And if I don't have something going, Michelle has something going. And I get my hurry up calls, and I seldom, only at a night time do I ever sit at night for, you know. But like during the days, somebody now that Gina's working, you know, I'll pick Gina up, and I don't mind that, you know. I know how hard it is when you have them all going different ways, and I used to do this for our kids too. When Pat was going to Calisanctius, he would get on the bus, and first of all, he got up at 6 o'clock with my father, and my father used to take him in the morning, and so by the time school was finished, he'd get on the bus and he'd go to sleep. And I would get a call, Mom, I'm at Delaware and Sheridan, or I'm here, or I went to this bus used to break down all the time. And I'm here or I'm there. I never knew where I was going to pick him up. And then, but I never had a car at my disposal. One time we sold our house and we took the down payment in a car, an older car. And that dumb thing, that wouldn't ride for me. Or Gerard would have it over the night before, and he must have had pushed it in the driveway because there was no gas in it when I went to take it out. So Gerard nursed, I can't remember how long Gerard nursed this car along. And then it just gave up the fight. And Jerry said, do you want to get something else? And I said, no. I didn't want to. Anything I can do, I can postpone till you get here, and I know my house is going to be here when I get back.
When did you learn to drive? Were you in high school?
I learned to drive I took lessons from a driving school, but I did all my practicing with the 3 boys in the car. So I still drive like I have 3 kids in the car, you know. And when I was driving, it's just above, I'm driving about 52 years now because from the age, if I remember the ages. And you know how when you learn to drive, you go up the stop sign and put your brakes on? I did that and I knocked them off the seat. Fran would get up on his knee and he said, Mom, you're a crazy driver. So, you know, then Jerry used to get home around by between 3:30 and 4 o'clock. So Gerard was going to school at Newman out at Main and Kensington, beyond Main and Kensington there. So I would pick him up if something was later at school. And Kitty next door, my friend Kitty, my very good friend Kitty, she would take them to the swimming, take all the kids to swimming, and then when Jerry would come home, I would go get them. And by this time we had a Volkswagen. All those kids would pile into the Volkswagen. It looked like the circus car when those kids would all pile out of the circus. Well, it was a circus wagon.
Where did you go in the summer? Where did they go swimming in?
Well, we had it's Audubon now. Now it's enclosed. But we had an outdoor pool, and if you even looked like you were going to run, they would make you sit on the bench, or they would make you call and come home. And but if I remember correctly, I think they were kind enough that they would make them sit. It depended on the kid that was. So I would pick them up, and you know, you knew they were safe because they had all these lifeguards. And my when we built the room on the back, my father wanted to, as long as we had the hole here, I think that's what you call them, he wanted to dig a swimming pool. And I said, we had the room, you know, and I said, you wouldn't be doing me any favors. I can't swim and Jerry can't swim. And I'm not, we had so many kids in the neighborhood, and I'll take the kids over and we'll pay. It wasn't, I forget what it was nominal, the fee, you know, it was worth every penny of it, even if you haven't had umpteen kids going. But I was always glad I didn't do that. It was bad enough we had this whole house back here, and I called it the house of ulcers because they came from all over to throw stones at it when the kids were. And when the girls were young, they used it for a doll or a house, you know. And at that time, we'd have a spring pickup. And Jared'd say, you can go shopping in the spring if you take everything out of it so I can put things in for the winter. So they had a couch and they had all this stuff. And the boy 2 doors down put stuff on the, board on the inside so they could put pictures up. And they planted a garden in front, so they have flowers in front. But the payoff was we come home one night, we'd been out, and the house back there was all lit up. Come to find out, Robbie, while we were gone, connected electricity to the garage. And when I saw that, I almost fainted. You know, when I thought what might have happened. And then later on, I was making my bed one morning when the boys were older, and I looked out the window, and here the boy across the street is handing a pillow and a blanket over the fence to the girl. And I thought, uh-oh, what's going on here? So when Jerry came home, I said, Jerry, I got a sneaking house idea the house of ulcers might be a house of something else. So anyway, when Fran come home, I said, Fran, what's going on? What was John doing in the house? He said, oh, his old man kicked him out. And Cindy felt sorry for him. And he said, I told him he could sleep in the house. And Cindy felt sorry for him, and she gave him a blanket and pillow. So they cured up that, but it was a good story, I hope. And so when the girls and we had 3 boys next door to us, when they got older, Kitty said, Jerry, no more living in that house. Don't have anything that anybody can sit on. Fill that house up. So that was it. That's when these kids were starting to party and drugs were getting, you know, you were watching as much as you could, but there was always that wonder there.
That was a whole different time.
It was a whole different world. And the beards and our boys all had curly hair, so they never could grow long hair. They grew like a pyramid, you know. I was always threatening that I was going to cut their hair when they were asleep. But then I thought the hair's the least of it. Their grandfather used to tell them, did the barber die?
How old were your children during Vietnam? They were,
well, Fran and Gerard, their number never came up, but they were both on. They both had real bad allergies. Fran, the doctor said Fran was allergic to, I forget how many things he said, that, you know, there were very few things he wasn't allergic to. And so they're, you know, they had that number. Pat was in college, and I think that by that time Gerard had from this allergy business, he had 6 operations from high school until after he was married, from his head would open and drain, and he went through hell for, like, I think it was around 6 years that he. So it when I first started, I didn't think of all this. It was a busy time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you've kept your life busy, and you're still keeping your life busy.
Right. I always think when they're carrying me out, somebody's going to say, "Wait a minute, you forgot."
Somebody's going to ask you where their shoes are.
Yeah, that was, yeah. We had one that we always looked for his shoes. We never could find his shoes. And that's at a time when they had one pair of shoes. They didn't have.
That is right.
Now, when I see all the things they have, it's I'm glad they didn't. They had enough. They had enough to keep up with without. Of course, we had everybody's kids here. The day my dad moved in upstairs after my mom died, he called to me and he said, and I thought, what happened? He took hollering to me, and I hurried out. And he said, I hurried out to the hallway. And he said, Jeanne, I just counted 18 kids came out of your yard. They had, this lot is very long, and they used to play kickball back there. And they all of them, they were from, everybody down the street let theirs fill up with trees, but we've always kept it. But they had one, they'll all tell you what good times they had, and Michelle still tells Chad, if you hadn't come along, I'd still be with there. I said, oh God, no.
And you're still baking. You were talking before about somebody.
Yeah,
remembered
baking.
you're baking your rolls.
And we used to make homemade spaghetti, and we put a broomstick from one chair to another, and the spaghetti has to be hung one by one. And I like, both our girls make raviolis at times. You know, they Anne especially. She figured when you learned how to make raviolis, that was that. It's a chore. You know, it's a special. In fact, Pat's friend, his best friend, best man, and who is a doctor now, his mother said to me one time, they were here to dinner, and I had made sauce, and at the time we bought half a cow at a time.
Oh.
And I was down to like the end, and I used to keep the good meat for special, like Sunday's shoes, and so I made a round roast. That's what I made my sauce from. And she said to me, whoever told you to use this cut of meat? And she was a doctor's wife too. And she said, you don't use this cut of meat in your sauce. I said, well, that's what I had. And it was good. And the same with she said, who told you you made lasagna every week? Pat tells me you make lasagna once a week. You only make lasagna for special occasions. I said, I'm Irish. So we had fun. We had our tears and our mourning, and we did a lot of that. So, but that's part of life too.
Remember the good times.
Yeah, right. You know, when you're thinking about, you remember the good times. The other things, kind of, they come. You know, like nudge you once in a while, you know, and that's Irish too, if things are going too good. You know, you just, but if you, in our house, if you had a face, one of my sisters especially, you know, if it wasn't a smiley person, and my mother used to say, "What's the matter, Gertie Gum?" So my mother had name for everything. So somebody they knew that didn't offer someone something they were eating, and she'd say, "Are you Dick Smith in that?" And you know, she had all these. In fact, Louise, our one daughter-in-law, said to me, why don't you sit down and write down all those phrases your mother use, but you don't, you know, you can't. It just doesn't come to you like that. Now with being around Michelle's children being raised, in fact, they will tell you. One day I went in there and Michelle had them cleaning the basement. And I said to them, she said to them, "You better do a good job. Grandma's going to come down and inspect." And one of them piped up and she said, "You know what she's going to say? It looks like the Irishman's shanty." So even they have picked up, you know, they picked up these things. When my sister died, they had the priest who was a personal friend had all her grandchildren tell of something they remember from one of their grandma's sayings. And now let me think if I can remember. So after it was such a touching funeral, and they played "When Irish Eyes Are Smiling," and then, you know, that's all you needed for the end of the. And so I went back to Michelle's house from the funeral, and I was telling her about the funeral, and Andrew came out, and I said to him, "Andrew, when I die, what is something that I have said to you? What are you going to remember?" And he looked at me and he thought for a minute, and he said, "The only people who make mistakes are those who are doing something." Now this was 5 years ago. He was 10 years old, you know, and it just knocked my socks off to think, you know, that he would remember that.
Can you remember saying it?
Yeah, I remembered saying it, yeah. Because I you know, and I've said it to my kids too. Michelle remembers, you know, if something broke or something, and my husband always says, "It's over with." You know, that was his way of looking at it, and that was his mother's way of looking at it, you know. And no matter how, maybe I hooted for the minute, but to be careful, or, you know, but when I in the next instant, because that's the kind of my temperament is, you know, it's boom for the second, and then who cares for the, you know, it goes. You know, I just don't, you know, I just don't care about.
You talked about cooking, or making ravioli and spaghetti. Who taught you? Did your mother-in-law teach?
My mother-in-law, yeah. Only my mother-in-law, she had a thin, my father-in-law made it was a piece of wood about this big, and I'd say 2 inches. And that's how she rolled. And she rolled from the inside outside. Inside outside. So my husband he has one made for me, but he had one made was about 4 inches. And it worked good. So I used to set it in alongside my refrigerator. So this one day I was washing my floor, and I had a bag made for it, and I could tie it. And I set in there, and I hit that thing, and it came down and hit me in the head. To remind me, guess what? When you improve on something, look out. My mother-in-law was the most wonderful person who ever lived. We laughed so hard, and just before she went into the nursing home, we always went out shopping on Thursday, and then we went to the nursing, we didn't go to the nursing home then, and Sunday, most of the time, because her other children would come on Sundays too, and we would go out with her sister, who was a widow, and we would go out to dinner on Sunday. So, but shortly before she went into, I think she was 97 when she went into the nursing home, and she lived to be 102 and a half, and still was. Her body was deteriorating, but her mind wasn't. And so this day we went in. I used to hoist her, give her a hoist. She hung onto the railing, and give her a hoist under her hind end there to help her. So she turned. She said to me, "Be careful, my coolie," which is Italian for hind end. And I get hysterical. Yeah, so she'd get in the kitchen to sit down, and we'd always get her a drink of water, and I'm laughing so hard, and she'd say, "Don't tell me you don't drink." But she was the most, she just was so calm. She just never, and we were married 51 years when she died, and I'd never seen her get excited about anything. She just moved deliberately, and she was kind and loving and caring, and you never heard her say anything about anyone. And I always used to think when people wrote to Abby in the newspaper, or Ann Landers, and they'd say, "If you have a good mother-in-law and your husband picks up his clothes, send her a bouquet of roses." Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And I used to think if she's the one that deserved roses.
Wonderful.
So
wonderful. Well, your life continues, and you've had a good life.
I've had a wonderful life.
Yeah.
I've had the kids have all been so good, and I wouldn't replace any of them. I'm glad they weren't twins, but I love them one by one, and I love them dearly, and I appreciate them. I appreciate what they've done, and I appreciate what they've become, and I love their father dearly, and I think that was the main thing.
Yeah, that's a gift.
Yeah,
that is a gift.
All the in-laws they've all been wonderful people, and now with these great grandchildren, each little angel appearing, that's great. Not that the grandchildren aren't wonderful too, but they're in their other phase now too.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Jeanne.
You're welcome.
This is for your family.
Wait till I see this, I'll probably go nuts.